I have the good fortune to collaborate with some serious nerds, academics, who take my contributions seriously, which is a challenge for them, since most of what I put out is made to be accessible to the most academic audiences. I'm trying to make the ideas that we come up with accessible to anyone. And so I am working in new media more than they are. They're mostly writing academic papers and books, and with all the citation and all of the rigor. What we're all focused on, though, is a challenge not just in dealing with popular audiences as I do, but in academics as well. In academics, when you're talking within the life or social sciences, you can construct theories that have great detailed explanation at a local level. That is, they explain how motivations change, how behavior changes, what chemicals are the source of what appetites. But since they're all operating within the assumption of appetites and motivations, there's this enormous gap. A gap that has been there since the beginning of human thought, the gap between matter and mattering, the gap between currents, which are just physical, and currencies, which are of value to someone. That gap is a serious challenge for anybody who's trying to understand what we really are. That is, you can have all this detail, all of this local detail in explaining phenomena, but if you start from the assumption that there are motivations and appetites, that organisms are struggling for their own existence, then there's this gap. And scientists generally don't see the gap. They dismiss the gap. They kind of assume it and assume it away. It causes resistance to thinking about how to really close that gap. How to explain how mattering, life's struggle for existence, could ever emerge from chemistry. Most of the models just assume it or assume it away. They ignore the gap, or they say they've solved it with something like DNA or natural selection, or the combination of them. This makes scientists crypto-dualists. Crypto meaning closeted. They don't want to admit that they have actually leapt the gap. They dismiss the kind of dualism we get from spirituality or religion as claptrap. As you don't get to just make up gods or spirit or soul. But at the same time, when we talk about DNA as an information-bearing molecule, we're actually doing a dualist move. We're saying there's a material molecule, and then there's this unexplained explanation, information that's out there somehow. Everything's information, or information is something that gets deposited like a soul into a molecule and makes it selfish. It's a kind of hand-waving that we're trying to avoid. So I make videos that try to expose the gap and then try to deal with the gap, try to explain it. And I just made one. It's an AI conversation between two Gen Z people in which they stumble on the challenge of crypto-dualism in science, the way that the science nerd is basically two-timing reality by assuming that there's this stuff called information that maybe wants to be copied or gets selected or chosen by natural selection, as if it's a god that prefers certain things. So to expose that is not to say that science is bunkum. It's to try to get science to focus on this challenge. How does mattering emerge from matter? So I'm going to show you this video, and then I'll talk a little bit about the ending of it. It kind of trails off into a hint, which we researchers consider to be essential to understanding the difference between living, trying beings like us and inanimate matter.
You're religious, right?
Well, I've been religious. Maybe I'm more spiritual now. Like, I don't know that there's a God, but yeah, I believe there must be more to reality than matter because, matter isn't trying to do anything. It's not alive, so I don't see how you could get life out of just matter. There must be something more, a vital force, consciousness. Some kind of spiritual energy that makes things come alive.
You're a dualist.
Meaning what?
You believe there are two realms, two realities.
Yeah, I suppose I am. There's matter, and then there's this spiritual energy, a vital force, a higher power.
Energy like Watts?
No, not Watts. I don't know. Some kind of supernatural energy that makes matter come alive.
That scientists can't detect, right?
Yeah, that's why. Science is only about matter, and matter isn't alive. I figure there must be something beyond nature, a second realm, the supernatural on spirit.
Where is it?
Spirit is everywhere. It's in everything.
If it's in everything, why are only some things alive?
I figure spiritual energy enters into matter, makes it come alive, and then exits at death. You can't see it, but you can tell when it's there.
Wait, I thought you said that spirit was everywhere, in all things.
I don't know. I'm only guessing how it works.
Where does the spirit go when someone dies?
Maybe it returns to the great spirit pool. Someone said, life is like being a droplet of spirit tumbling down a waterfall, which is why you feel separate. And then when you die, you return to the great spirit pool. What about you?
Yeah, I don't get it. You say spirit is everywhere, but then you talk like it's only in living beings, like a soul.
Yeah, confusing. There's spirit in everything, but souls are somehow different. Do you believe in spirit and souls?
Nah, I'm not a dualist. I'm into science. I believe there's only matter. I'm a materialist.
If there's only matter, how do you explain life?
I'm with Darwin. Natural selection, DNA, and genes.
Are they material?
DNA is material. Genes are the information in DNA. Information that's trying to get itself copied, and natural selection chooses the genes that copy best.
DNA has information in it?
Yup, it's an information-bearing molecule. What's wrong?
I thought you said there's only matter.
There is.
But now you're saying there's matter and information.
Yeah, physics says everything has information.
If everything has information, how is DNA an information-bearing molecule?
It's special. It's a molecule that contains genes, which are the information. It's science. It's materialism.
You say that, but I think we're both struggling with the same problem. Matter doesn't seem to explain life, so we're both dualists. There's matter, and then, for me, there's spirit or soul. For you, there's information.
You're a dualist. I'm not. I'm a materialist.
So you say, but the way you talk about information makes you sound like a closet dualist. And anyway, both of us say there's this second stuff that's everywhere, but also only in living beings. I say it's spirit. You say it's information. And both are unexplained explanations that don't really explain why there's life in a lifeless universe.
Hey, maybe this has been the story all along.
What do you mean?
Like, for thousands of years, people have been saying there must be something added to make things come alive. Either that, or there really isn't a difference between life and non-life, that everything's alive or nothing's alive.
Yeah, but wait, is matter all there is in nature?
What do you mean?
Well, don't scientists say that there's a whole lot of empty space? Isn't that nature too?
I suppose.
Like the distances between matter make a difference?
How do you mean?
Like if you're trying to get home and there's traffic, you'll take a detour around the traffic. The path of least resistance. Maybe distances make a difference to how things flow.
Huh. In that case, maybe I'm not a materialist. Maybe I'm a naturalist. No supernatural spirit, but not just matter.
Yeah, that might be a way out of the confusion we've had for thousands of years. Maybe there is a way to explain how life emerges within nothing but nature.
In our research, under the guidance of Terrence Deacon, who has really developed most of these theories, what I offer you here is an interpretation of Terry's work. I have worked with him the longest of any of us research colleagues. That's some of the source of my credibility. And I have demonstrated that I do not attempt to bastardize the theory. I'm trying to be very accurate about it while making it intuitive, accessible, and relevant to everyday life. But what's essential to this work, what's our top priority, is to get people to focus on this question: how does mattering emerge within nothing but nature? How do selves struggling for their own existence ever emerge within chemistry, which is not trying to do anything? So that's my first priority. And the second has to do with method, how to keep from slipping in, smuggling in a little bit of purpose talk or a little bit of purposeless talk when talking about life. So we tend through language to imply that the universe creates or produces or generates us. That suggests a kind of trying, that the universe is trying to do something. And then on the other side of that, we sometimes talk about ourselves as though we're just machines. We're just the push and pull of molecules and matter in motion. That it's just mechanics. Or we go to mystical areas like quantum mechanics and say that since quantum mechanics is a mystery, then so is consciousness, so they must be the same thing. Something like that. So our first priority is really focusing on this question. How do selves and trying emerge within nothing but physical chemistry? How? Not why. No abstractions, no assumption of information. And then the next is to be really rigorous about our language, to avoid the kind of dualism that we can fall into, where we either treat the universe as though it wants something, or living beings as though they're machines, as though they don't want anything, or just mechanics, as if they are, just what we call efficient cause. Then the third is this hunch that I get to at the end of this video, which is that what hasn't been much of a focus is the way that changes in work happen as a result of constraints, limitations on work. So when the woman in this video is talking about traffic congestion, she's trying to offer an intuitive example of an emergent constraint. Traffic congestion is a difference in the spacing and speed of a flow. And though all the people in the cars are trying to get somewhere, the same kinds of dynamics, physical change, occurs, let's say, in water flow, in turbulence. You get traffic jams among molecules too, just as they're flowing downstream. So we get changes in flow. And though that doesn't explain life, it does give us a hint at how to think about changes that would lead to the accidental emergence of purpose. How you'd ever get a chemical system that is regenerating itself faster than it would otherwise degenerate. So that's the hint I'm leaving at the end of this video. Now, I wish I'd made it without the cell phones. It was one of my first attempts at video animation in AI. And also, I do hear from people who say, don't use AI, it's all slop. I'm just trying to keep up with the different mediums. I do not think we will be able to simply swear off AI. I'm trying to make useful content within this new medium that I'm assuming everybody's moving towards. It's hard to keep up with changes in medium. And this is what I'm attempting to keep up with, despite the fact that I'm 70 and have no business playing in that playground. Now, we have an actual model for how chemistry started to try to keep itself going. And we do have a clear distinction between what life does and what life doesn't do. Life is self-making, functional, interpretive effort. They are trying to keep themselves going. They're doing work that works, effort that functions, to keep themselves going, to remain a being, a living being, in their workspace, which is about interpretation. Once you have interpretation, then anything can become information. It only is information when it's about something for that self. When you think about information, that's really how we assume it operates. Information about something for someone trying to do something. Anything can become information. But it's not like information is everywhere or nowhere or only in genes. I have to be able to explain that stuff. So we have a theory for that, and yet that theory is the least of our commitments. The core commitment we make is to try to corner people with this gap that people typically hop over. They basically avoid the gap by assuming two realms, whether it be spirit, soul, God, all of that stuff, vital force, any of that kind of magical stuff, or whether we talk about it as motivation, information, appetites that are just assumed once you're in the life realm. Think about it this way. If you were in college and you went to a physics class in which they talked about the moon trying to pull on the tides, you'd think that was a little bizarre. But down the hall, life scientists and social scientists talk about trying all the time in so many words. What's the difference? Why is it that you can't talk about it in physics and chemistry and the physical sciences? Why do you have to talk about it in the life and social sciences? That's where our focus is. That's the core question I'm trying to corner people with. And the second commitment, the second most important commitment for us, is to really watch out not to smuggle in some kind of purposeful implication for the physical sciences, or to assume away the trying that living beings do. That's why my book was called Neither Ghost Nor Machine. I don't get to employ a dualistic ghost to explain selves. I don't get to say, well, there's information in molecules and it copies and then it's selfish. I don't get to do any of that stuff. Nor do I get to treat us like we're just cause and effect physical behavior. We are, but we're a constrained subset of it. I do work to keep myself from all sorts of otherwise likely physical possibilities, most of them pointing to my own degeneration. I have to work against my own tendency to degenerate. I have to basically set up emergent constraints that keep me from just dithering and falling apart. And if you focus on that, if you focus on, I'm not something added to physics and chemistry, I'm a subtraction of possibilities. I make the most likely possibility, which is that I'll fall apart, that I'll degenerate, I make it unlikely. I'm actually unlikelifying my own demise. I am making absent my own absence. I am a constraint, an emergent constraint. Not like traffic congestion, but I am sort of like that. But I'm an emergent constraint that channels energy into work to regenerate the emergent constraint I am. That's my approach. That's what that video is attempting to tempt you into thinking about with me. And I've made lots of other videos on the subject.